Unit 2, Section 1, Parallel Lines and Transversals. So today we're going to talk about what happens when we have parallel lines, which normally you will see have this type of symbol to show you that they're both parallel. And we have a line called a transversal, which intersects those parallel lines. When that happens, there are some magical relationships that form, and we can use those to help prove different theorems and also find the values of angles. So let's learn a little bit more about that, and we'll begin with vocabulary. So our first word is coplanar, lines that are on the same plane. Remember we learned about collinear, that was lines that were on the same, that was points that were on the same line. Now we're talking about lines that are on the same plane. Parallel lines are defined as two lines on the same plane that will not intersect. Perpendicular is when two lines intersect to form a right angle. Transversal is a line that crosses two or more other lines, as I showed you in the previous image. An angle is two rays with the same endpoint. A vertex is the point where two rays meet. And interior are the angles formed on the inside of the two parallel lines and the transversal. It's a lot, so let's take a look at some examples and explanation. We have more vocabulary. Alternate are angles that are diagonally opposite each other from the transversal. This will all be easier when we look at a picture. Corresponding, angles that are in the same basic space related to the transversal. Congruent angles are angles that are equal in measurement. Supplementary angles, Supplementary angles are angles that add up to 180 degrees. I have a little tip for this. Complementary angles are angles that add up to 90 degrees. So let's look at how we can create 180 from an S. We take the S and we turn it into 180. We take the C and we turn it into 90. That's one way to remember it. The complementary is the C that can turn into a 90, and the supplementary is an S, and an S looks much more like an 8. That's the 180. That means they add up to that amount. Very important information for geometry. Vertical means two angles that are diagonally across from each other. So if I had something that looked like this, 1 and 2 would be vertical angles. And then adjacent, if I had the same picture, adjacent are two angles that are next to each other on either side of the transversal. So 1 and 3 would be adjacent because they're next to each other. 1 and 2 would be vertical because they are diagonally across from each other. Okay? Here are some visuals. So we've got an alternate interior angles. You can see they're interior because they're on the inside, but they're alternate because they're not on the same side. If you look down at the next one, those are same side interior angles. Interior means inside. These are the same side and they're inside, right? And then we have alternate exterior angles. Well, these are outside. They're not inside this space right here, so we consider them to be external. And they're alternate because they're not on the same side. Now we have same side external angles. And finally, we have something called corresponding angles, which is where one is on the inside, one is on the outside. Okay, so the alternate interior, the alternate exterior, and the corresponding are all equal. The same side and the same side interior and the same side exterior are supplementary. That means they add up to, remember the S, 180 degrees. What do we need to watch out for with this? Well, it's obviously confusing. There are a lot of words that sound the same. You have the word angles in all of them, and then you flip-flop between interior and exterior, and then you have alternate and same side, and then you have corresponding. Lots of words. So be careful. Color can help. I would just label everything with different colors when you have something to use as an example. So here I will show you on the next page. Here's an example of what you will see. It says name all the angles that are congruent. So let's go back. Congruent means equal. One more time. The ones that are equal are the alternate interior, the alternate exterior, and the corresponding. All right, so alternate interior would be, using color, it's going to be 3 and 6. Okay, that's alternate interior. And you show this by saying angle 3 is congruent to angle 6. All right. Also, we will see 4 and 5 are alternate interior angles. So angle 4 would be congruent to angle 5. All right. What else? We also learned that alternate exterior angles can be equal, so 2 and 7, as well as 8 and 1. So that would be angle 2 congruent to angle 7. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 8. Well, that covers all the angles, doesn't it? Now they're asking which ones are supplementary. Well, that's a little bit easier because if it is across from each other on a straight line, like 1 and 2, they are definitely going to be supplementary. So angle 1 and 2 is supplementary. Angle 3 and 4 is supplementary. 5 and 6, 7 and 8. And then, if we're really careful, we can see that these are also across from each other. So that's going to leave us with 2 and 4, 1 and 3, 6 and 8, 7 and 8. Okay, so we had a lot of angles that were either equal or supplementary to each other with this transversal. Now, another way that you might be asked this is, what are the measures of the angles? Okay, so when you look at this example too, it gives you a degree, only one, and we can find the rest of these angles just by knowing those magic relationships. So if we know that this is 100 degrees here, then next to that must be supplementary, so this must be 80 degrees. If we look back up, we know that 2 is equal to 3, so 3 must be 80 degrees. And that means that 100 degrees is the same for 4 because those are supplementary. Okay? Then let's go down to 5. What is 5 equal to? Well, 5 is equal to 4. We already know that 4 is 100, so we can go back and make this 100. If 5 is 100, then 6 is 80, and 6 would be equal to 80 because 3 and 6 would be congruent. And if 6 is 80, then 8 must be 100, which means 7 must also be 80. So not so bad. It's not that hard once you start to figure out the different relationships. Here's your exit ticket. Give it a try. First, you're being asked to identify if they are corresponding alternate interior, alternate exterior, vertical, or adjacent. So I would have those words and the visual next to me, or flip back and forth. And then on the second section, you're also being asked to identify those types of angles. Co-interior just means they're together on the same side, on the inside. Good luck.